how much would you sacrifice to see the past?" The old man's voice rang in Jacob's ears like a distant whisper, the kind that sent shivers down your spine. Though the room was warm, the stone sat between them on the rickety wooden table, a small, shimmering thing, barely the size of a marble. But in the flickering lamplight, it pulsed like a beating heart. Red, blue, then black. Jacob couldn't look away. He was a historian, a man of facts, not myths. Yet here he sat, surrounded by crumbling bookshelves in a dusty, forgotten shop, buried in the back alleys of London. He had searched for years to uncover secrets about the missing century, a dark period in human history no record could explain. Scholars called it the Forgotten Age. Jacob called it his obsession. And this stone, this impossible stone, was his key to solving the greatest mystery of mankind. "What's the price?" Jacob's voice trembled, despite his effort to sound calm. The old man's thin lips curled into a smile that held no joy. "The past is not a place one visits for free." "What do you mean?" "It will take something from you." His gnarled fingers pushed the stone closer. "Memories, moments, or perhaps people." Jacob's brows furrowed. "That's impossible." "Is it?" the old man said, leaning in, his shadow swallowing the table whole. "You've already sacrificed years for this quest of yours. Tell me, Jacob Mercer, how much more are you willing to lose?" Jacob didn't believe the old man. Not really. But something about the stone called to him, louder than his doubts. That night, back in his lonely apartment, Jacob turned it over in his hand. It was warm, warmer than a stone had any right to be. And with every pulse of its glow, he swore he could hear faint whispers. Then it happened. The first time felt like a dream. One moment, Jacob was staring at the stone in his palm, and the next, he was standing on the cobbled streets of medieval London. The air was heavy with the scent of soot and smoke. Men in ragged cloaks shouted as carts trundled past, and a bell tolled in the distance. He stumbled, heart racing. This isn't possible. This can't be real. But it was real. He could touch the walls, feel the stone under his boots, and smell the rancid air. Time travel. True time travel. The stone had worked. Hours passed like seconds as he wandered through the ancient city, scribbling notes and marveling at sights no modern man had seen. When he finally gripped the stone again and whispered the words the old man had taught him, the world spun, and he woke up, back in his apartment, drenched in sweat. Jacob laughed, half hysterical, half ecstatic. It was true. The stone let him visit the past. But then he noticed something odd. A picture frame on his desk. His mother's photo was blank. He frowned. Strange. He shook his head and blamed it on exhaustion. But he couldn't shake the unease that curled in his chest. The second trip was longer. This time Jacob visited ancient Rome, watching gladiators battle in the Colosseum. He was mesmerized by the roar of the crowd, the brutal clash of swords, and the grandeur of history unfolding before his eyes. When he returned, another picture had gone blank. His childhood dog, Max, the playful golden retriever who had been his best friend, was now just a faded frame. Jacob froze. The whispers grew louder. Jacob tried to dismiss the strange disappearances. "It's a coincidence," he told himself. "I've been too focused, too tired." But deep down, he felt it, like a shadow creeping into the corners of his mind. By the time of his third trip, the stone had him hooked. This time Jacob chose the Lost Library of Alexandria, a dream for any historian. He stood amidst towering scrolls, inhaling the scent of parchment and ink that no human nose had breathed in over 2,000 years. He traced his fingers over texts that could rewrite history. His hands shook as he tried to memorize every detail. When he returned, his apartment felt emptier. Jacob couldn't pinpoint why, until he glanced at his bookshelf. A photo album that had been there for years was gone. Not misplaced, just missing, like it had never existed. The whispers from the stone turned louder now, like distant screams echoing in his ears. And then, one night, the dreams began. Jacob woke drenched in sweat, hearing faint cries, familiar cries, but couldn't remember why they felt so close to his heart. He pulled out the stone, holding it under the pale glow of his desk lamp. Its colors pulsed again, red, blue, black. "It will take something," the old man had said. "Memories, moments, or perhaps people." "Impossible," Jacob muttered. "It's just a stone, a tool, nothing more." But the truth gnawed at him like hunger. Jacob rifled through his apartment, searching for anything that proved he wasn't imagining things. His mother's photo? Blank. The family pictures on the fridge? Gone. His heart thundered in his chest as a chilling realization crept over him. The stone takes memories, real ones. The more I use it, the more it steals. Days turned to weeks. Jacob swore he would stop, but the stone called to him, whispering promises of the answers he'd always sought. One more trip, he thought. Just one more. This time, Jacob chose to visit the Ming Dynasty in China. He stood inside the Forbidden City, surrounded by silk-robed scholars and crimson banners that rippled in the wind. He watched as artisans painted masterpieces and astronomers mapped the stars. It was beautiful, perfect. And then he heard a voice, a whisper, but not from the stone. It was clearer, nearer. "Jacob." He spun around, his breath catching in his throat. A woman stood in the distance, her face obscured by shadows. "Jacob," she whispered again, her voice soft and pained. "Who are you?" he called out, stepping closer. She didn't answer. Instead, she faded into mist, her silhouette vanishing like smoke in the breeze. Jacob's chest ached. Why do I know that voice? When he returned to the present, his apartment felt cold, lifeless. Jacob's phone buzzed. It was his sister, Emily. "Jacob." Her voice trembled with panic. "Are you okay?" "Of course." "Why?" Mom's gone. Her name, her face. I can't remember anything about her. It's like she never existed." Jacob's blood ran cold. The stone clattered to the floor, pulsing faster now, its colors more violent. Jacob spent hours piecing together his shattered memories. He scribbled names, dates, and faces onto scraps of paper, terrified they might vanish too. "I have to fix this. I have to get her back." Gripping the stone, Jacob whispered the words again, this time with a new purpose. "I'll go back to before it all started." The stone burned in his hand. As time warped around him, Jacob staggered and fell to his knees, only to find himself standing in the shop once more. The old man sitting exactly where he had been, his smile as cold as ever. "I told you," the man said, his voice echoing. "The past has a cost." "Make it stop," Jacob shouted, his hands trembling as he held out the stone. "Tell me how to undo this." The man shook his head. "It can't be undone. What is taken is taken." "No," Jacob's voice cracked. "There has to be a way." "There is only one path," the old man said. "Give the stone to another. Pass the curse along, or bear the weight of what you've lost forever." Jacob's chest ached. His mother's laugh, the sound he could no longer remember, rang faintly in his ears. His sister's panicked voice echoed in his head. He couldn't pass this to someone else, not even to save himself. Jacob knew what he had to do. He couldn't bring his mother back, but he could stop the stone from taking anyone else. Standing on the edge of a remote cliff under a moonlit sky, he held the stone one last time, Its colors pulsed slower now, like it knew what he was about to do. "Goodbye," Jacob whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. With all his strength, he hurled the stone into the abyss. It disappeared into the darkness, swallowed by the earth and sea. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, the whispers stopped. Jacob fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The memories were gone, his mother's face, his childhood, so much of his life. But the stone was gone too. The weight of its curse had lifted, though it left him hollow. Years passed. Jacob never truly recovered from what he'd lost, but he found solace in sharing his story. He became a professor, warning young minds of the price of obsession. One day, a student asked him, "Do you ever wish you could change the past?" Jacob smiled faintly, his eyes distant but kind. "No," he said softly. "The past is a teacher, not a place to live. Some things are meant to stay where they belong." The student nodded, but as she turned away, Jacob caught a flicker of light in her bag, a faint red, blue, black pulse. His heart sank. The stone had returned. The past is a dangerous place. It's natural to long for what we've lost, but obsession comes with a price. Some things are meant to be left behind, or they will consume you.